Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us here for our weekly news update, where we like to get together once a week, is all we do. We can't handle those everyday updates. I don't know if you're one of those people that get them every day. Oh, my goodness, come on in. We're getting therapy from that. Shalom, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. So good to see you all. And so thankful to all of you who share the link, who like and subscribe. We're always grateful you drop by. And we do these once a week. It's a labor of love, if you will, as a house that we do these. As we like to say around here, we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. And it's easy to get overwhelmed. You're getting a lot of updates, a lot of things going on in the world, and it can overwhelm you. And so this is something that we guard against, because the scripture tells us to be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication make our needs known unto Eloah Hayam. And so that is what we focus on. But, it's also wrong to be completely disconnected, right? So we like to have that moderation. Just once a week, we get together, take a look at what's going on, look at it through the biblical worldview, understand how the scripture is coming to pass, how it continues cyclically to come to pass. Man cannot outrun the commandments of the Most High. Amen. And so those of you that are awakened to that, who now understand that, well, you're watching a little differently than those who are just being swept like driftwood down this river called life. So thank you again. I love you all. It's always so nice to see you. You guys are always so polite, kind, and considerate. I'm just very thankful. Anyway, here we are. Our website is, of course, remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com. And of course, at the top, you'll always find this handy banner. Always take you to the latest broadcast. And if it's on a Monday night, well, you come right in with us and join us here. And tonight's top story, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is giving warning to Cuba. We're going to get to that here in a moment. But before we do, just want to point out that we do have these great resources here for survival guides, and they are important. We continue to see more and more reasons to have those. And, of course, we do have the search bar for those of you that are taking a look back maybe at some of the trends. And that's something that I do. Now, maybe you're not a trend watcher. I'm a trend watcher. So maybe I just put that for me and a few of my geek friends. I don't know. But perhaps if you're like me, you're like, hey, I want to know, how many flood stories have we done? How many earthquake stories have we done? How many of these other stories have we done during this time, right? And so we have to kind of keep an eye on those things. And sometimes, well, they get quite interesting. So some of you are pattern watchers like me, and you start to see some of these things and go, hey, just a second. And it's always fun to get together with people that are doing that, because it's like, that's what we mean by compare notes, right, guys? We're like, what patterns have you observed? And what patterns have you observed? And on that note, let's get into the news. As we said, tonight's top story is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is making threats against other Latin American countries. And this is one of the concerns that we had, folks, about this event as it unfolded. Now, I know a lot of people had opinions about it, and we certainly want to support our president and support our troops. However, we also know that there would be fallback and there would be repercussions. And after all, whether we like it or not, we are an internationally dependent nation that requires food and many other things from other countries. So that is partly the concern that many of the elderly, if you will, the older generation, started to go, whoa, careful, careful how you behave. We can cause a lot of problems. And so Marco Rubio was saying he believes Cuba is in a lot of trouble. And of course, the Secretary of State's latest remarks came after he told reporters that he'd be concerned if I were the government official in Havana. Just one day after the U.S. conducted a military operation that led to the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated a warning to Cuba, telling NBC News, Meet the Press, that he thinks they're in a lot of trouble. Now, these threats are no longer empty, and that's one of the things that's going to cause consternation across the earth, because, of course, now that you've carried out a threat, now that you've made good on a promise that you would come and you will deal with someone, well, that's a different story. And so, of course, many of you remember that we were walking this story out. We were talking about this actually for a couple of weeks and saying, my goodness, are these people about to go to war? And thankfully, and I say this with respect, because any kind of action is bad. We don't want any kind of war action, right, guys? We are all looking for that day when we beat our swords into plowshares, as it says in the book of Isaiah. However, when I saw this action and I saw minimal loss of life and an extraction action, I was much happier to see that than a bombardment, right? A war, a let's light them up, blow up everything and kill indiscriminately, which we have all seen. And I have yet to see a U.S. president, and I will say this in all candor, and I'm going to be 62 years old. I have yet to see a U.S. president that went after a leader of another country that brought them safely, physically capable of walking on their two legs, back to answer charges. Usually they come in a box, usually in pieces. Just saying. Okay. So the fact that they extracted this person and what have you, that was actually a little extraordinary. So now we're watching this with new interest. And Maduro did arrive at New York after capture in Venezuela. He did threaten the president of the United States. He thumbed his nose at him and he called him out and said, "Come get me, you coward." Well, that was probably not the thing to say. So the Green Berets went in there and picked him up. And of course, unless you've been under a rock, the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro and his wife landed in Stewart International Airport in New York on Saturday afternoon, and they've been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and weapons offenses. And of course, the U.S. launched a wide-scale air, land, and sea military attack on Venezuela earlier on Saturday, involving at least 150 aircraft, and Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country. So for all their bravado and their chest beating, when it came down to it, it looks to me like the military of Venezuela more or less stood down, knew that there was really no way they were going to defeat the United States, so they essentially allowed this man to be captured. So again, the countries that are beating their chests and talking big are just doing that. And of course, Venezuela did deploy combat-tested Iranian long-range strike drones to respond to the U.S. military buildup. So they weren't just standing there waiting. They did start to develop their own counter-offensive weaponry, but the U.S. is not Ukraine, okay? And so they didn't need to wait to go. And the Venezuelan Air Force was confirmed to have picked up Iranian Mohajer 6 unmanned aircraft, which is first known armed drone type that have been brought into service in the country. And the aircraft are based at the El Libertador Air Base in Air Force's primary operational facility, where the country's fighters have also been based. And of course, they do them any good. So again, a lot of times these equipment purchases and chest beating, it's just that. But the fact that you're going up against the U.S. military, which literally trains for kinetic action, it's a little different scenario. And they came in heavy and they came in hard. And so one thing that, again, I am happy about, I really have to say this, is that we didn't see a lot more loss of life. And that's always my concern. It's like we can't stop these things from happening, guys, right? We look at these events and we go, well, they're going to do what they're going to do. But to not see women and children blown to pieces, you know what I mean? Bodies blown all over the place, the buildings blown to bits, which they could do. They brought parking lot makers and they had them parked right outside Venezuela. I'm talking parking lot makers. Everything they dropped would make a parking lot. Wherever it landed, there wouldn't be nothing there, just bodies. They could have done that. They didn't do that. So I was very happy to see that. I don't know about everybody else. Everybody has their own opinions and thoughts. I'd love to hear your comments, but at least I saw that. So that made me feel better. Now, that being said, you crossed into a sovereign territory, you crossed into a sovereign country, and you grabbed a leader the way that you did. You just set a precedent. And not only did you set a precedent, you affronted pretty much every president of any country in your hemisphere. So that now presents new problems. It doesn't matter that you might have felt justified, right, guys? Because, I mean, after all, the guy was doing some wicked things and, according to the indictment, was involved in some narco-terrorism and all. So let's assume all that's true. Assuming 100% of what you're charging him with is true, the look is still bad. it still looks very bullyish. It still looks very emasculating, whatever it is. And of course, that's why you're going to get a reaction from Latin America. And that's exactly what you're seeing. You're seeing country after country going, they're thumbing their nose and they're going, you got to be kidding me, right? So from a PR standpoint, this is going to be disastrous. And that's why I think a lot of people took a step back and went, whoa. Now, again, like I said, happy to see that there was a lot less loss of life than there could have been. Could have been a lot worse type of operation. So I was really happy to see that. Actually was. And I will say that. However, it now presents new challenges. Look at all the rhetoric that's coming out of the other countries now. China is now making a big deal out of this. China social media is hailing the U.S. Maduro move as a Taiwan template now. They're saying, oh, well, this is how we do it now. This is the way we go. President Donald Trump's capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro sparked widespread discussion on Chinese social media, with many users saying the operation offered a template for how Beijing could handle tensions with Taiwan. Now, who was connecting those two dots, Taiwan and Venezuela? I don't know. A bunch of people off in a corner on a weekly news update, but I digress. Trump's operation against the Venezuelan strongman shot to the top of Chinese Weibo last Saturday, with the topic gaining some 440 million views on the X-like platform. So lots of people talking about this, right? And so this is one of the things we knew would occur, that there would be a blow up of conversation about what precedent this set, what then this now means to any imperial power. And if there isn't a blowback, if there isn't some kind of pushback, if there isn't some prosecutorial pushback, then this presents some real serious challenges going forward. Now, imagine being the president of a country like like Venezuela 10 years from now, or Brazil, or any other, Colombia, Panama, Nicaragua, a bunch of smaller countries in southern in the southern hemisphere, and not the least of which Mexico, have to now be concerned. Wow, could we be at any moment just extracted in the middle of the night by Green Berets, right? So that's a new thing, a new wrinkle that now has to be considered in part of the international dialogue that once was very civil, at least pretend civil, in South America, and then now has become quite hostile. So I'm not sure that this move isn't going to backfire in the long run. In the short run, it looks like, there may be some benefits. But in the long run, I think it may severely backfire in the United States. And Colombia's president is raging. He's literally raging. He's daring them. He's defying them and say, come get me. I'm waiting. And a huge taunt to Trump. And Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, who President Trump said he better watch his behind, and he didn't say it that nice. Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, issued a stark warning to Donald Trump after the capture of Nicolas Maduro sent shockwaves around the world. And the Colombian president issued a stark 3-word warning. Yeah, come get me. Come get me. I'm waiting for you here. Don't threaten me. I'll wait for you right here if you want to. Okay, this is a lot of bravado, right? This is a lot of angry, male, Latino bravado, okay? We all know that. Everybody, take a step back. Who doesn't see bravado? Who doesn't see a bunch of guys doing the guy thing? Come on. Let's take a second, okay? Who doesn't see a bunch of guys doing the, yo, you want a piece of me? What? Who doesn't see that? You don't see this? Okay, this is stupid. There's lives at stake. There's families involved. Okay, we don't behave this way anymore. And the 1950s call. They want the diplomacy back. I mean, come on, folks. Nowadays, you can email between leaders and you can resolve your issues. You don't need to be bombing or chasing anybody down. So this is nonsense in many, many ways. And the U.S. has an uphill climb internationally. They have their case they need to make to the Venezuelan people, to the world, and the American people as well, that this action was justified, and in such a way that puts the genie back in the bottle, if you will, because I think that this just opened the kettle, and it may have loosed a spirit of war on the earth that we may not come back from for a while. it may have unleashed a spirit of war on the earth that we may not come back from for a while. So, folks, we need to be, if there was a time to be watching, for the remnant to be watching and praying, this is it, because this just got stoked up another level. And we all know it's theatrical. So let me give a shout out to all of you who have figured out the theatrics. Okay. And that is reality. There's a lot of theatrics. I saw pictures where Maduro changed clothes 4 times. Now, that could be AI, that could be a lot of things, right? But here's the thing. And let's just say, that it's legit for whatever reasons. I don't know. Maybe they got a wardrobe back there. Every time he goes into a door, comes out another different jumpsuit. It's okay. I don't know. Personally, it's sketchy. I think we're all watching this thing on a stage, and a lot of this is manipulated. That being said, it doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it's theatrical or not. Here's my point, because it doesn't matter in the sense that the average guy, the people on the ground, are still going to be affected. Whether the event was real or staged makes no difference. A lot of times people think that if they can prove something wasn't real, that therefore it won't have effect. No, it'll still have effect. Even if you prove it was completely forged or fake or whatever, it doesn't matter. So you have to take a moment and take a look at how this is unfolding in the world stage, not necessarily what you believe. What you may believe may be completely 100% accurate. But if it doesn't make any difference if it's affecting world opinion. So we might know that it was a staged event, for example. Something might be a staged event. We may figure that out. Doesn't matter if the rest of the world believes it. We still have to know that that impact is now hitting. And if you don't agree, there's plenty of other channels you can go visit with. Okay. So, I mean, there's big internet, so, I mean, it's kind of it's the way it works. So anyway, China's Xi Jinping is taking advantage of this, of course, new thing. And of course, he's taking a look at this from a different perspective. And China's Xi Jinping, of course, he doesn't agree with Donald Trump. He doesn't agree with America at all. And he issues an unstoppable Taiwan invasion threat as World War III fears are mounting or soaring. So China's President Xi Jinping made the bombshell comments in his New Year address. And so, again, these are comments that are paid attention to by world leaders. And this was, of course, at the beginning of the year. And he sent a speech televised by state broadcasters. Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are bound by blood ties thicker than water. And the historical trend toward national reunification is unstoppable. And so I think one of the things people do forget is that there is a very, very strong population in Taiwan that want to be reunified with the mainland. It's never a big margin between the ones that want to stay independent and the ones that want to reunify. It's usually 51-49, that kind of thing, right? So it's not that big a gap as I recall. And don't quote me on that, but I'm just saying my understanding is that it's not that big a gap, which means he's not exactly speaking to nobody. He's speaking to a big, big contingent of the population of Taiwan that actually do want a reunification with mainland China. So there is a massive, massive conflict here brewing with that. And of course, we saw the connection between. Many of you may have a disagreement. Maybe you don't think there was a connection. I think there was. What are your thoughts? Put your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I just don't want to argue during the broadcast. That'd be appreciated. But I do appreciate your thoughts because we do need to have counter ideas as we walk. So as we look at these things and when you put comments, it gives us a chance over the week to really contemplate some of the things that you might share. And for example, we talked about last week how that we thought that there was a connection between, or at least I thought so, between Venezuela and Taiwan. And we continue to see dialogue that ties the two together. That's not accidental. So that's a trend, if you will, that I continue to pick up. And maybe you do too. We're also seeing some things going on in Iran. And so Iran is having some very, very serious internal turmoil. So this began right at the beginning of the new year. Iran protests turned deadly as the anti-regime demonstrators entered their 5th day. And it's a couple stories on this here on remnantwatch.com. Unrest deepens across Iran as protesters clash with security forces. And there are several videos showing the conflict that is going on. And according to Reuters, several people have been killed since the unrest escalated, based on reports from Iranian media and human rights groups. And Iranian authorities have confirmed at least one death. And Iran International said that 7 protesters were killed by security forces, making Thursday the deadliest day of the protest so far. So there was a lot of people very concerned, and they're watching Iran with great interest. And of course, they're using this as a pretext, of course. So you've got to watch this again, because once again, it doesn't matter whether things are orchestrated or not. What matters is what are their net effect. That's what we need to look at. So they are now in a showdown with protesters, as they're storming governor's office, and crowds are chanting death to Khomeini, which is a very unusual thing, especially those of us that remember the 1981 events that occurred in Iran. Businesses, universities, and government officials closed under government order as economic crises fuels violent protests. And that is a major reason for the problem. Iran is ground to a near standstill Wednesday as businesses, universities, and government offices closed under a government-ordered shutdown amid protests caused by a growing political and economic crisis. A 21-year-old volunteer member of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard was killed, which, of course, is igniting the youth in Iran. And this is exactly how they got to be the kind of country they were to begin with. If you guys remember the history, it was a youth revolution that brought in the Ayatollahs in the early 1980s, when, or actually late 1970s, under the Carter administration. And of course, they took hostages of the American embassy, if you all recall. Naturally, of course, they released those hostages as soon as President Ronald Reagan took office. But nevertheless, the die was cast. And so from that time till now, we have seen sort of the aftermath of that revolution. Well, now it looks like they may be going at it again. And this looks like a counter revolution to that one that happened back then. And so Trump is saying the U.S. will intervene if Iran starts killing protesters. He's calling it, he's saying we're locked and loaded. Oh boy, looking for another fight, are we? This is the one looking for the peace prize. Remember that. Okay, so Iranian officials warned that the U.S. should be mindful of their soldiers' safety following Trump's comments. And of course, that is a veiled threat. And President Donald Trump warned early Friday that the U.S. would intervene if Iran started to kill protesters. Writing on Truth Social, the president said, if Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. And so he's feeling very strong and mighty. Trump is warning comes as demonstrations are triggered by Iran's deteriorating economy, of course, being pressured by the international community, isolated in every possible way in order to bring exactly the kind of change you're seeing right now. So this is the kind of power that can be brought to bear. And as a matter of fact, even in Venezuela, that just had its president removed, their new president, this lady who's in charge now, Venezuela's new leader, Delcy Rodriguez, is a hardline socialist who kept Maduro in power for years, and she's already making threats against Trump. So some would say they don't learn, right? So it's quite interesting. Venezuela's interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez, is hurling threats at Donald Trump after the capture of the country's president. And it's not so much whether or not that they can militarily execute those threats. It's all the other ways in which they can hurt the United States. It's small ball, folks. It's a death of 1,000 cuts. It's guerrilla warfare. It's a different kind of conflict when you antagonize an enemy like that, and then give moral high ground or justification to that enemy. Oh my goodness, that could go on for a while. So this could get bad. And like I said, I think the United States has its obligation. I mean, what's your thoughts? I think the obligation of the U.S. is now to make that case, to make it clear that this person was not a good guy. I think the opposition of Venezuela, the ones that they claim they legitimately won the last election, really need to be vocal right now. and legitimize this as quickly as possible. So every day that they wait, every moment that they wait, without getting in front of cameras and saying this is legitimate, this was important, and why it was part of the rule of law or something like that, if they don't get in front of this, it's going to get bad. So that's why we're concerned, because it looks very heavy-handed, very heavy-handed, especially when you know things like this. And let's face it, we're not all, just following Fox News, right? We all have brains and we use them. Now, I'm sure this had absolutely nothing to do with any discussions that the U.S. oil inventories at the Cushing storage hub were falling to the lowest in decades that they've been. This is now a year old. So these reserves are very low. Now, what do you think there are today? This was a year ago. Okay. So crude inventories at the country's flagship storage hub fell to their lowest. And again, there's a lot of concern about this being about oil. Well, I don't think they've been very ambiguous about that. I think they've been quite clear that it was about oil. And frankly, the more I looked into that part of the story, I can see justification and logic behind it. Because if you, as a, sort of bigger nation, help out smaller nations developing infrastructure, i.e., oil recovery or oil reclamation inventory or infrastructure, with the intent that you're going to be partners in this, and then that country decides to go to the other direction and support those that are now undermining your very economic strength, I can understand why they'd feel a certain kind of way about that. So I could certainly understand why they might want to go, hey, wait a minute, we built that. We built that with we were going this way, and now you guys are going to use our equipment and our stuff and our tech, and you're going to go that way. So I can kind of understand how they felt that way. Nevertheless, still looks heavy-handed. So all that aside, it still looks heavy-handed, and that look isn't going to go away anytime soon. So there's going to be some massive pushback here, and I think it's going to slowly build. I don't think it's done building, and we keep seeing things like this, which aren't going to help. U.S. spy jet circles Mexico, the coast, as Trump threatens Venezuela-style military attack again. So again, he's now going to be saying this a little bit more because this person likes to say things a lot. And so the U.S. Navy plane has been spotted circling near a part of Mexico's coast after President Donald Trump threatened military action against the country. The P-8 Poseidon was detected on flight tracking websites conducting surveillance and reconnaissance missions off Tijuana, just south of California. It launched from Naval Air Station Whidbey Island in Washington, flying over Oregon and California, then looped several times off the coast of Mexico and Southern California before returning to base. So are they now getting recon for interjection in Western Mexico? I don't know. But I can tell you this, there's a lot of activity going on in Western Mexico, and it is really getting wild on the ground. And so this is getting to be quite a hot conflict. And so again, if you have family in Mexico, or if you were thinking of traveling to Mexico, that might not be a good idea. And if you have family in Mexico, you might want to sponsor them for a visit. Tell them to come on over and visit with you for a while and get out of there while this conflict continues, because Mexico is heating up. We're going to be talking more about that as more reports come out. Right now, it's still early. Some of the reports are mixed, and I don't like reports that are not a little better vetted. So we're looking at that, but there are certainly some serious casualties on the ground in Mexico on both sides of a conflict that appears to be entrenched. So it doesn't look like something that's going to be over very quickly. And I think that's why President Trump is making the comments that he's making about the president of Mexico really not running Mexico, and that the cartels run Mexico. And so he's making these comments. These are very, very strong comments that he's making, very strong statements. And so again, the United States is picking fights in its own hemisphere. Speaking of picking fights, Netanyahu is proposing round 2 of Iran war in 2026, and U.S. sets conditions for support. It wants to go after Iran a little harder. Israel could launch a new air campaign against Iran in as early as 2026, and 3 sources claim in a report published by Axios on Wednesday. And on Monday, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with President Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, during which the two leaders discussed efforts by Iran to reconstitute its nuclear program following the and American airstrikes in June, and to extend its ballistic missile arsenal. So they continue to paint Iran as a regional threat that is going to cause irreparable damage if they don't go in and do it first. So we better go hit them before they may possibly someday in the future hit us. That logic is wearing thin on the world, so I think they're running out of time to pull that maneuver, and that tells me you're most likely to see it sooner than later, unfortunately, folks. So, are we out of the theater of war yet? Not by a long shot, folks. And again, looking at the book of Revelation, should we be shocked to see the spirit of war, if it was released once, could be released again? And now we're taking a look at some of the things that are happening, of course, in Eastern Europe. And we thought we'd see a wind down, but that's not looking like the case. Putin is deploying the unstoppable nuclear-capable Oryshnik missile amid peace talks. So he's not slowing down one bit. This article is on Remnant Watch. You're welcome to take a look at it. Vladimir Putin's nuclear-capable Oryshnik has officially been placed on combat duty amid talks between Vladimir Zelensky and Donald Trump. And the conventional intermediate-range missile system, which could reach Britain in 11 minutes, has now been moved from Russia and is stationed in neighboring Belarus. So, dun dun dun, the plot is thickening in Eastern Europe as Putin is bringing out his not so primitive equipment. How many heard that comment that President Trump called Russia and their war primitive? Primitive. That was insulting. So now, of course, they're bringing out weaponry. And this is, again, all these things, words, wars are words. Well, they cause effect. And things said cause effect. Look, they're thumbing their nose over there. Next thing, the guy's picked up. I mean, these things matter. These things matter, and they're not being very wise. We have to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. You got to pick your fights smarter. And certainly didn't. Saudi Arabia was, of course, active bombing Yemen, a port city, over weapons shipments from the UAE for separatists. So again, we touched on this, I believe, last week, touching on it again, because this is an ongoing area of concern. Saudi Arabia is bombing Yemen's port city of Makalla on Tuesday after weapons shipment from the United Arab Emirates. So learning from the United States to just go ahead and attack, this is what they're doing. Do you understand the precedents that are now being set? It's a different country. Yemen is a different country. And just went in and bombed it. Okay, so these are the precedents that have been set in our world. We have got to reverse that at some point as humanity. We have got to reverse the notion that a country can just take its fighter jets and fly over a line and just start dropping bombs on another country. We're not there yet, but we need to get there someday. But we're not there yet, and that's sad. Okay, and of course, there's a lot of emotion involved in war, and a lot of times that's what's causing a lot of the bloodshed. Frothing with rage, Russia threatens to kill Zelensky and parade his body after stirring up a fury over denied Ukrainian plot to blitz Putin. And President Trump seethed over hearing of the alleged assassination attempt from the Russian tyrant. And so there's a lot of bad blood, if you will. Russia is threatening to kill Vladimir Zelensky directly and put his body on public display after ramping up a rage after a denied Ukrainian plot to blitz Vladimir Putin. And so he's very upset about this. And of course, again, here comes the United States targeting an actual leader. And what does Vladimir Zelensky do? He says the next day, well, now the U.S. knows what it must do. We're basically inferring that they should do the same to Putin as they just did to Nicolas Maduro. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? So we now started a thing here. We started a thing here in a very, very dangerous time to start a thing like this. Okay, and that's my point. It's not whether we agree with it, not whether we think it's true or not, whether we think it's staged or not, whether we think there was 5 photographs, 8 photographs, whether he was really Nicolas Maduro or Saddam Hussein. I don't care, guys. What matters is they just set a precedent. That's what matters. That's what we're paying attention to. Okay, while everybody else is getting caught up in minor details that are really petty and really immaterial in the grand scheme of things, we've got ourselves a problem. and it may be a serious one. Moscow found itself in a problem. And again, this is part, I think, why they're seething against Ukraine. And for good reason. I mean, Ukraine's a pesky little enemy. And this also tells you something, that just because they're not big and huge and maybe they can't take out Russia in one bit, but they can still do a lot. Look at this. Moscow's plunged into darkness after a successful drone attack by Ukraine. So they're going to have pests for a while. Nearly 500,000 Moscow residents are understood to be without power. So that's a lot of people in the cold, man. And Russia just be getting cold, like serious cold, okay? Residential buildings, including tower blocks in the capital, have been captured in complete darkness. Street lamps are also appear to be blackouts in some areas. The only source of lighting come from the cars and the road. So who's suffering? Vladimir Putin? I don't think so. I think it's Vladimir Putin's people. I think it's the average guy. It's Olga and her family huddled around some wood stove trying to survive the stupidity. I don't think it's Vladimir Putin at all. And those people aren't within. It isn't within their power to do anything about that leader. So though the other side will say, "Well, you should get rid of that Putin guy," they can't do that any more than you can. So they just sit in the middle and they suffer, whether they're in Ukraine or they're in Poland or they're in Russia. Makes no difference. That's why I was grateful at least there wasn't a bunch of unnecessary violence in Caracas, because there's people have suffered enough, man. They've had economic downturn and terrible conditions. Like 9 million people or some ridiculous number have left, emigrated out of that country, not to mention who knows how many went to prison and all kinds of things. So this has been horrible. And that's why we want to continue to pray for peace, shalom, throughout the earth. And of course, Eastern Europe's not going to continue to do well. And these things have bad repercussions. War doesn't always pay off the way they think it is. I'm not sure why they thought it would, but they did. And Germany's banking sector is facing growing crisis amid record insolvencies. Companies filing bankruptcy left and right. Germany's economic crisis is slowly but surely making its way into the balance sheets of banks. And I do think that they meant this intentionally. Remember Charles, that guy saying, "You will eat the bugs, you will own nothing, and you will love it." And they intended to bankrupt everyone. The only solution to this really is a jubilee, something that we have talked about for some time. The year 2025 is ending as a disastrous year for Germany. Around 24,000 companies filed for insolvency or bankruptcy, a record figure surpassing only the crisis year of 2003, following the bursting of the dot-com bubble and the subsequent recession. Back then, a total of 39,000 companies went bankrupt. So this has been horrible for the nation of Germany. And for those of you that are paying attention to the geopolitical landscape, you know that Germany is essentially the backbone of the EU's economy. So as goes Germany, so goes the EU. And that's why you're seeing a tremendous amount of pushback going on in the EU right now against the centralized government, if you will, of the EU, because they want to go off on their own. And also one of the things that we know was going on was people were buying paper instead of actual assets. And so that has finally been sort of arrested as a process starting the beginning of the year, which is why you're seeing a tremendous increase in the price of silver, a perfect storm of policy, supply, and industrial demand. And many people don't know that every single electric vehicle has 2 ounces of silver in it in various components. The great silver squeeze of 2026 is on its way. Global silver markets are entering what many analysts describe as the most severe supply crisis in modern history, as people who have contracts for silver, watch this now, are calling them in, and they don't have them. And of course, starting January 1st, 2026, China is implementing new export restrictions on refined silver that are already sending shockwaves throughout the global market, because that's where they were hoping to grab that silver and meet their requirements. And now with these new restrictions, they're going to be exposed for the fraud that they committed. Do you understand? Because they won't be able to run real quick. Pay attention, guys. I know this is deep, but stay with me. They won't be able to run real quick and say, China, send me some silver real quick before this guy sues me. Can't do, my friend. Why not? No restrictions. Oh, no. And now they know that you sold a piece of paper without the silver. You get it? So we got a massive problem on its way. We got a white collar massive collapse that is on its way, and you are just now beginning to feel it, folks. You're just now beginning to feel it. So those of you watching silver go up and you're thinking, oh, right, silver's finally going up. There's a reason. There's a reason, and it's catastrophic. The reason is catastrophic. And so the dam is finally breaking. And this is really, really a serious thing. And there's another reason for it, because China, as I said, every EV vehicle requires, I think it's 2 ounces of silver in all of its components. Actual silver has to be used for the construction of electric vehicles. And for those of you who don't know this, China took the lead in manufacturing of vehicles for the first time. China overtakes Japan as top automaker after a 20-year global lead. So Chinese automakers are set to become the world's largest sellers of new vehicles in 2025, surpassing Japanese manufacturers for the first time in more than 2 decades, driven by EV dominance. And that is driven by silver, guys. Exports and control of the industry supply chain. Data compiled by Nikkei Asia using company disclosure and SAP Global Mobility figures from January to November show Chinese brands on track to sell close to 27 million vehicles globally. 27 million vehicles. Now, I just told you that each one of those have to have 2 ounces of silver in them. So now let's do the math, guys. That's 54 million ounces of silver per year that they're going to need in order to keep this going. You guys with me so far? You catching up? You understanding why they're now restricting their silver exports? You understanding why silver is going to be going up now? Okay, because there's just a physical squeeze on that as an asset. What is dropping? Well, what is fake is dropping. So the dollar, of course, which has nothing behind it other than conversation, is on course for its biggest drop in almost a decade as Russian ruble crowned 2025's best performing currency amid hopes of a Ukraine ceasefire. And the U.S. dollar is on course for its biggest annual drop in nearly a decade after Donald Trump's trade war triggered a slide in the value, and against many countries have taken the U.S. dollar out of their reserve portfolio. Mr. Trump's tariff blitz, as well perceived attacks on the independence of the Federal Reserve, contributed to the dollar tumbling more than 8 points against the basket of 10 major global currencies, the largest decline since 2017. So not looking good, looking rough for the dollar. And at the same time, the Russian ruble has emerged as the strongest performing currency of 2025, a remarkable rebound for its war-battered and heavily sanctioned economy, proving resilience against sanctions and resilience against attack makes investors very interested. So that has now proven to be a better place for international investment as they see that even when sanctioned, Russia still pulls through. Whoo, that's a message that the West did not want out there, because think that through. The message they wanted was, if you come under sanctions, your economy is going to go destroyed. That's not what happened. As a matter of fact, China had the best year ever, and they took the lead on EV vehicles, and they're not going to give it back. And they had $1 trillion surplus. So they thumbed their nose at the Americans' constrictions and restrictions and went ahead and had a great year, both countries. That is not accidental. All right, so that's telling you the tide is turning and it's moving east. And of course, he's going to continue to, tout himself as if he's being successful. I'm talking about Donald Trump. He's going to continue to talk about things as if he's doing great. And that seems to be the rhetoric inside the country. So it's one of the things that we need to be careful about, because inside the United States is very different than outside the United States, and the way in which people perceive. And so, a lot of the conversation and the rhetoric and so forth, a lot of articles are coming out on both sides, some very, very heavily in support of the president and very much in support of his policies, and others are incredibly critical, and rightfully so, I think, because I think he made some potential blunders here that we will watch unfold and see. Hopefully not, but it's looking rough. Okay. In the meantime, lots of different businesses are suffering economically, and that is a reflection of the real world. When I look at these things, and you look at headlines, you look at announcements and things like that, that's great. But we start looking at whether or not businesses are doing well. Now, frankly, I'm not really a big fan of the bourbon business, but it does indicate that things have changed in the world. Another bourbon distiller files for bankruptcy as the sector collapses. So we're talking about an entire sector of the economy that is now collapsing. Another American spirits maker has gone bust, adding the growing signs that the U.S. whiskey and bourbon boom is sharply reversed. Ohio-based A.M. Scott Distillery, which filed for bankruptcy on December 22nd, is the latest casualty. And of course, those of us that are believers and don't drink, we don't really care about this, but it does indicate the economy, like I said, is in, and this is going to affect, it's going to have a ripple effect, right? So you still at least need to know about it, even though you're not necessarily directly affected by rye whiskeys and so forth. However, again, this is going to affect the price of rye, bourbons, and things like that that were being purchased by these producers. So you take out a producer, you take out a buyer. This affects the economy. The ripples are all over the place, and so these are things you can't just ignore. These are things that unfortunately are going to affect you whether you like it or not. Another thing that's going to affect you whether you like it or not is the geological things going on the earth. And how many know that the scripture tells us there will be earthquakes in diverse places? And here we had one, a 6.5 magnitude quake that shook off Mexico City. And that had to be something considering everything that's been going on in that country lately. And it also gets a 6.5 magnitude earthquake. Yep, it shook Mexico City and parts of southwestern Guerrero state on Friday, the National Seismological Service confirmed. And President Sheinbaum was forced to evacuate the presidential palace during her regular morning press conference, along with journalists in attendance when the earthquake alarm or alert sounded. That had to be an interesting sight to see her running for cover in an earthquake. That had to be something to behold. So lots of going on in the earth at this time. And at this time, we're also seeing, like I said, we're not only seeing this economic change occurring for countries, so countries that didn't figure it out quickly enough. And I think Russia and China are demonstrating that they had to get off the American system in order to survive. And they did. They jumped off. They jumped full off completely. And they're doing well. That tells you something. A lot of people are not getting that message. So what's happening is a lot of companies inside the Western system are suffering because the entire system is changing. I keep telling you guys that it's a massive, massive shift that is going on right now in the way in which we all do business. And so this is not going to stop. It's going to continue. And there's a list of companies on Remnant Watch you can take a look at. There's a list of companies that are laying off employees in January. And a lot of them, dozens of companies across the country, including Amazon and FedEx and companies that you wouldn't think are going to be losing people, are going to be laying off people in January. And why it matters, thousands of Americans are poised to be impacted by layoffs. And again, these things ripple. So it doesn't just affect the people that are laid off. It affects what they were using their money for, businesses that are affected by it, the peripheral businesses. It starts to shut down all across the country. This causes depression, folks. This is very, very serious. More than 1.1 million layoffs occurred in 2025, according to December 2025 report. And so what to know? Essentially, basically, you're looking at 60 days. So as we come up into Passover, the country is going to start to feel it. Okay, as we come to Passover, you're going to start to see real effect around the United States. And thank you, by the way, Brother Paul, for that quickly for that report. And we're seeing more and more headlines talking about earthquakes and earth movement inside the continental United States. We're seeing more and more of that. So again, thank you. And for those of you that are seeing that as well, please do keep making note of that because we want to know. We're watching all of it. And some of these are pretty significant. But again, getting back to the economic things just quickly for a quick moment, because this is pretty important. This is going to affect a lot of people who really have to make a lot of decisions just economically, just whether they're going to eat or pay certain things. And right now, there's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to decide between food and health insurance. I'm telling you that right now, because health insurance costs are set to rise 114%. That's doubling, folks, for millions as subsidies expire. So more than 20 million people in the United States are going to face sharply higher health insurance costs as of today or as of right now. after January 1st, after enhanced tax credits that helped enrollees in the Affordable Care Act, Afford Covered, expired overnight. So they set up a bunch of people, made them think it was going to keep working. They forgot about this deadline. They didn't think about it. Guess what they're now looking at? They're looking at 114% increase in their costs. They're getting the bill and they're going, you got to be kidding. Right now. That's what's happening right now. All over the place. 20 million of them. 20 million notices went out. 20 million emails or notifications or whatever. You don't think that's going to affect the economy? This is a perfect storm of stuff that's going to keep hitting hard. So this is why I adjure you, my brethren, to get wise in this hour, band together with your brothers and sisters, and come up with other solutions. Meanwhile, people that thought, again, political movements are really difficult to put too much faith in. So you got to be really careful with this stuff. And this thing is starting to fall apart too, as they start to tear each other apart. The whole MAGA movement. A lot of people were really sold on this, thought this was really going to work great. And there was too many egos, folks. There's too many people with their own agendas. And of course, now you've got them. I'm not going to read into this, but I'm just saying now you've got division even among them. So you're going to keep seeing this fracturing. This is very bad. Very, very bad. In the meantime, we got North Korea popping off hypersonic missiles off the West Coast. Yeah. So while we're being distracted by all kinds of other stuff, this keeps happening. And that's important for us to keep that in mind, because while we may be distracted by our domestic issues, the world continues. Kim Jong-un emphasized need for strong nuclear deterrent, and hypersonic missiles are harder to intercept due to their maneuverability. And the launch coincides with South Korea's president's visit to China, and some analysts link tests to Pyongyang's concern over U.S. strikes on Venezuela. So we're not really sure what's provoking Mr. Rocket Man, but nevertheless, now they're talking about that issue. And so is it a serious issue? You bet. And I believe that we need to be very careful in the Western Pacific. I'm telling you, there are things changing there. This is not going to be as easy as it used to be. So here we go. By the way, there's a new wearable out. I'm not going to go into this because it looks like it's behind a paywall. But there's wearables now. They got rid of the wristwatch. They're going to be going with the rings. Pay attention. I remind you all, the Lord of the Rings. One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them, right? So be careful with that. By the way, now, all of a sudden, I'm going to go quickly here so I can wrap up what we've got. Trump has set his sights on Greenland. So after doing what he did in Venezuela and grabbing up this guy, who, again, third change of clothes, okay, he set his sights to take U.S. takeover of Greenland after capturing Nicolas Maduro. We do need Greenland, absolutely, the U.S. president told The Atlantic magazine, added that the Danish territory was surrounded by Russian and Chinese ships, and we need it for defense. So what do you think the odds are that he's going to go get Greenland? Pretty good, because he keeps saying it. So what are they going to do? What's the Danish government going to do? Strongly protest? So you see what's going on. He's going to bully, and that's going to backfire, folks. Bullying always backfires, always. So do we support that? A lot of people are now taking a step back going, whoa. Okay. Good news is that at least some parts of the country are getting their sense back. So at least they figured out how to pick a bathroom. So that's good. And that's good news. North Carolina's finally figured some of that out. So that's great. At least we got some of that sorted. I mean, let's take the good news where we can get it, guys. Okay? Because we got crazy news that follows that right up. Look at this crazy. Now, I don't know if you know this, but this is demonic. So these arches are very demonic. You come under authority. That's why they're called. That's why you need an arch. And there was the Arch of Baal that was literally taken around the country and used, and people were putting it up. Well, now Trump says construction for the triumphal arch is to begin in 2 months. So he's actually building this monument. Will be the centerpiece of the White House's plans for America's 250th birthday. So they're going to have a triumphant arch you have to walk underneath. I want you to just process that. You have to walk underneath it. Okay. And so that is what you have going on right now. That is a spiritual thing. I'll be talking more about that in the future, I'm sure. But there is no doubt about it that an arch of that type, I won't even walk underneath those. So that goes to show you, I won't enter a building that has those. That tells you a little bit about them. They have spiritual authority, spiritual power, if you will. So very, very serious things. Speaking of serious things, did you guys hear about 40 people are dead and 115 injured in a fire in the Swiss Alps? This was interesting. And I watch these events not because I'm, interested in the Swiss Alps, but because I know that there are certain groups of people that do things on certain days. And this was bad. So 40 people were killed and another 115 were injured, and most of them seriously, after a fire ripped through the bar New Year's celebration and a Swiss Alpine resort less than 2 hours after midnight. So catching a lot of people asleep and incapacitated, inebriated, if you will. So I'm sure that added to the death count. Isn't that a tragedy? So again, more going on in our world that is coloring the day. And maybe there'll be more that comes out about that. But whenever I see that kind of death count, there are more people died on the Swiss Alps than died getting out Nicolas Maduro. So they got their pound of flesh a different way, if you follow those types of things, right? So very, very interesting. By the way, there are those that I thought this was an interesting story, so I'm going to throw this in there. Did you know that somebody who owns the Dallas Mavericks apparently is interested in seeing Trump? They like him so much they want him to run a third term. They're willing to give him $250 million to do it. Isn't that crazy? I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's a little bit much, if you ask me. So I think after 2 terms and the one in between that was just constant yelling and screaming, America might be all done with the whole Trump saga. At least I would hope so, because there probably is time for something new that will be coming along the way. By the way, did you know that a lot of these stores are storing biometric data? As a matter of fact, New York City's Wegmans is storing biometric data on its shoppers' eyes, voices, faces. So we've entered a new era where they feel entitled to information. They feel entitled to more than we would normally agree to. And that's one of the things that I believe is very dangerous about this hour, is that we've come into a time where we've allowed it. We've allowed this type of intrusion into our privacy, into our lives, and so forth. Meanwhile, when there are actual crimes being committed, here, let me refresh this page, and actual issues, well, that does not get vetted very quickly. We see this being stalled again. Now they're going to add 400 attorneys. Well, that'll speed things up. I'm sure that's just going to speed everything up so that we can go through these great records that everybody wants to see. Why not just release them? Nope, they got to go through them first. What does that tell you? Exactly what it's supposed to tell you. Is you're smart people. You're not easy to fool. So don't be fooled. The end. Neuralink's on its way out. People are actually going to do this. Can you believe this, guys? We're literally watching this. Are we watching this? Yes, we're watching this. Are we watching this? Yes, we're watching this. Is this happening? We're watching this happen. How many of you are going, you got to be kidding me, Peter? You're kidding, right? No, I'm not kidding. Seriously? I'm serious. Really? Really? Not joking. Look at this. Come on, guys. Are you seeing this? Neuralink plans high volume brain implant production by 2026. High volume. They're going for it, Neuralink, man. Elon Musk's brain implant company, Neuralink, will start high volume production of brain-computer interface devices and move to an entirely automated surgical procedure in 2026, Musk said in a post in social media platform X on Wednesday. Make it totally automated, a total automatic system. You just go, you get stamped, you're good. Bang, bang, boom. Go in this thing, probably an arch, maybe an arch of triumph or something. You go in there and get a snap on your forehead. What do you think, guys? What do you think? You go inside of an arch, maybe? Something like that? It goes zzz, zaps you, gives you an implant designed to help people with conditions such as spinal cord injury. Sounds so good. First patient used it to play video games. Isn't that great? Maybe they're concerned about mental degradation because the more lawless people became, the more destructive they become, right? The more wicked they become. And so this is a reality of the world that we live in. And so this last story here, I'm going to wrap up here with this story. It's a horrible story, unfortunately, but it is reality. And so I think I'm starting to wonder if they want to put these chips in people's minds, because we've gone over the edge, folks. We've gone so far over lawlessness that the love of many waxing cold. Well, Messiah warned us. And look at this. Look at this tragic story, this terrible tragedy. This woman was brutally stabbed multiple times in an unprovoked attack at Sonic Drive-In, and the suspect isn't even caught. He's still on the loose. Before I knew it, he just came straight up to my car, said no words to me, and just attacked me and just kept stabbing and stabbing. A woman was brutally stabbed multiple times last month at a Sonic Drive-In. Is speaking out about the unprovoked attack. Linda Hallroth drove to the fast food restaurant in Oklahoma just to pick up her order. And why did this happen to me? As she's parked, her attacker stabbed her through the window multiple times. He just came straight up to the car, said no words, and just attacked. Just kept stabbing and stabbing. This, my friends, is bloodthirst. This comes from a demon of blood, a blood demon, a demon that wants blood, or a bloodthirsty demon. And this inhabits someone. And then next thing you know, they do this kind of wicked kind of behavior just to get blood drawn. This is one of the things that we have loose in our world. So again, very important that you walk in things of the kingdom, that you lay aside every weight and sin that easily besets you so you can run your race, because those moments can happen at any time. And how many know that a gun or a weapon, you think in that way, you think, oh, if I wish I had a gun or what have you, but a saint under the anointing would have stopped that attack in its tracks, would have saved 2 people instead of 1 saved, 1 dead. So this is why it's more important for you to shine your light before men, that they would see your good work and give kavod to your Father that is in heaven. Well, that's tonight's broadcast. I pray this has been edifying and an encouragement to you. And again, we're thankful to every one of you that come along and help us out with these broadcasts. You are a barakah to us. We did actually have a couple who actually came along and said, hey, Peter, keep up the work. So thank you for that. I am really, really encouraged by that. Thank you so much. That was really sweet, and it really touched me. So thank you for taking the time to think of us. Thank you for respecting this work that we do every week, and we do it in love for each and every one of you. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening. Shalom.